I've had a really, really busy day. Yes, Gracie, you can have a treat. Oh my God. You want a treat? There you go. She's missing Daddy. Daddy's at the track still. Let me pop out the chat here. Hey, Karen, Lily, Kimberly, Jill. How's it going? Let me shut this off and blow my nose. I tell ya, I'm getting ready because I haven't been to the track, but I haven't been to the track overnight. I don't think at all. I think only once. Hey, Lilia. Hola. Oh, I'm glad you're doing well. Hey, Karen. So, I'm going to the track. What the hell is that in my hair? I'm going to the track tomorrow night. This is why you're not getting any more live readings until probably Sunday night or Monday. And I'm preparing to do Freaky Friday for my patrons at the track. Now, normally, it's, we play here with the lights and the clouds and the lights and the disco lights. But doing it at the track is a whole other ball game. Hey, big fire in downtown Phoenix. Where? Like we're talking Arizona, right? Because we used to have a mobile home in Peoria, which is just outside of Phoenix. Anyway, I'm going to get behind my fan here for a second. So I'm prepping. I know we're near the Capitol. Okay. I'm preparing to do Freaky Friday. Now, I've done Freaky Friday at the track before inside the coach. Friday night, I'm doing it outside the coach. I don't know how well my little speaker's going to do, but hopefully by the end of August, I will have a brand new party speaker for patrons. Oh, well, thank you, Karen. All right, I'm going to go behind my fan for a second. Everybody's just about here, I think. And anyway, so I built, see my clouds there? I built a portable cloud bank. And I went down the basement, took most of the clouds and lights off the ceiling. I took my sheet down off the wall. I took my mini lights down off the wall. I came back upstairs. I built a portable cloud bank for the pop-up. And then I'm going to put twinkle lights and I'm going to have my star wall behind me. It's all going to be at the track. Let's just hope the mosquitoes aren't too bad that, because, well, maybe I'll have to get one of them little things that keeps the mosquitoes away. So I've been a very busy girl. She's a very busy girl. The kind you take to mother. All right. Here we go. Everybody ready? Chapter 11. Payday. Two weeks had gone by now, and Pa worked every evening after supper in his little office at the back of the store. He was making out the time checks. From the time book, he counted up the days each man had worked and figured out how much he had earned. Then Pa figured out how much the man owed the store, so that he added the man's board bill at the cook shanty. He subtracted the amount from the man's wages and made out his time check. On payday, Pa would give each man his time check and the money due him. Always before, Laura had helped Pa with his work. When she was very little in the big woods, she had helped him make bullets for his gun in Indian Territory. She had helped him finish the house, and on Plum Creek, she had helped with the chores and the haying. But she could not help him now, for Pa said that the railroad company would not want anyone but him to work in the office. Still, she always knew what he was doing, for the store was in plain sight from the shanty's doorway, and she saw everyone who came and went. One morning, she saw a fast team come dashing up to the store's door, and a man in fine clothes got quickly out of the buggy and hurried into the store. Two more men waited in the buggy, watching the door and looking around on them on every side as if they were afraid. In a little while, the first man came out and got into the buggy. After another look all around, they drove away quickly. Laura ran out of the shanty toward the store. She was sure that something had happened there. Her heart was beating wildly, and it gave a great flop when she saw Pa, safe and sound, come out of the store. "Where are you going, Laura?" "Where are you going, Laura?" Ma called after her. And now Laura answered, "Nowhere, Ma." Pa came into the shanty and swung the door shut behind him. He took a heavy canvas bag out of his pocket. "I want you to take care of this, Caroline. It's the men's pay, and anybody that tried to steal it would come to the office." "I'll take care of it, Charles," Ma said. She wrapped the bag in a clean cloth and worked it deep into her open sack of flour. "Nobody'll ever think of looking in there for it." "Did that man bring it, Pa?" Laura asked. "Yes, that was the paymaster," said Pa. "Those men were afraid with him were afraid," Laura said. "Oh, I wouldn't say that. Oh my gosh. They're only guarding the paymaster to keep him from getting robbed," Pa said. "He has a good many $1,000s in cash to pay all the men in the camps, and somebody might try to get it. But those men had guns enough on them, and in the buggy. They had no need to be afraid." As Pa went back to the store, Laura saw the handle of his revolver showing from his hip pocket. She knew he was not afraid, and she looked at his rifle over the door and his shotgun standing in the corner. Ma could use those guns. There was no fear that robbers would get that money. That night, Laura woke up often, and often she heard Pa stirring too in the bunk on the other side of the curtain. The night seemed darker and full of strange sounds, because that money was in the flour sack. But no one would think of looking for it there, and no one did. Early in the morning, Pa took it to the store. This was payday. After breakfast, all the men gathered around the store, and one by one they went inside. And one by one they came out again and stood in little groups talking. They would not work that day. It was payday. God, wish Howie didn't have to work on payday. At supper, Pa said he must go back to the office again. "Some of the men don't seem to understand why they only got 2 weeks' pay," he said. "Oh, I'm so sorry, folks." "Why don't they get paid the whole month?" Laura asked him. "Well, you see, Laura, it takes time to make out all those time checks and send them in, and then the paymaster has to bring out the money. I'm paying the men their wages now up to the 15th, and in another 2 weeks, I'll pay them up to now. Some of them can't get it through their thick heads that they've got to wait 2 weeks for their pay. They want to be paid right up to yesterday." "Don't fret about it, Charles," Ma said. "You can't expect them to understand how business is handled." Ma sometimes had a lot of prejudices about people. Let's put it that way. Mom's got her flour sack, that's right. "And they don't blame you, do they, Pa?" said Mary. "Well, that's the worst of it, Mary. I don't know," Pa answered. "Anyway, I've got some book work to do at the office." The supper dishes were soon washed, and Ma sat rocking Grace to sleep, with Carrie snuggled beside her. "Oh my God, folks, I'm sorry." Laura sat beside Mary in the doorway, watching the light fade from the waters of the lake. She was seeing it out loud for Mary. "The last light is shining pale in the middle of the smooth lake. All around it, the water is dusky where the ducks sleep, and the land is black beyond. The stars are beginning to twinkle in the gray sky. Pa has lighted his lamp. It shines out yellow from the back of the black store. It shines out yellow from the back of the black store. Ma," she cried out, "there's a big crowd of men. Look." Men were crowding around the store. They did not say anything, and there was not even a sound of their feet on the grass. Only the dark mass of men was growing very large, fast. Ma rose quickly and laid Grace on the bed. Then she came and looked over Laura's and Mary's heads. She spoke softly. "Come inside, girls." When they obeyed her, she shut the door, all but a crack. She stood looking out through the crack. Mary sat in the chair with Carrie, but Laura peeped under Ma's arm. The crowd was too close around the store. Two men went up the step and pounded on the door. The crowd was quiet. The whole dusky twilight was quiet for a moment. Then the men pounded again on the door, and one called up, "Open the door, Ingalls." The door opened, and there in the lamplight stood Pa. He shut the door behind him, and the two men who'd knocked stepped backward into the crowd. Pa stood on the step with his hands in his pockets. "Well, boys, what is it?" he said quietly. A voice came from the crowd. "We want our pay." Other voices shouted, "Our full pay. Come across with 2 weeks' pay you kept back. We're going to get our pay." "You'll have it 2 weeks from now, just as soon as I can get your time checks made out," said Pa. The voices shouted again, "We want it now. Quit stalling. We're going to have it now." "I can't pay you now, boys. I won't have the money to pay you till the paymaster comes again." "Open up the store," somebody answered. Then the whole crowd yelled, "That's it. That's good enough. Open the store. Open that store." "No, boys, I won't do that," Pa said coolly. "Come in tomorrow morning, and I'll let each man have all the goods he wants on his account." "Open up that store, or we'll open it for you," came a shout. A growl rumbled through the crowd. The whole mass of men moved in towards Pa as if the growl moved them. Laura ducked under Ma's arm, but Ma's hand clenched on her shoulder and pulled her back. "Oh, let me go. They'll hurt Pa. Let me go. They'll hurt Pa," Laura screamed in a whisper. "Be still," Ma told her in a voice that Laura had never heard. "Stand back, boys. Don't crowd too close," said Pa. Laura heard his cold voice and stood trembling. Then she heard another voice behind the crowd. It was deep and strong, not loud, but plainly heard. "What's up, boys?" In the dark, Laura could not see the red shirt, but only Big Jerry was so tall. He stood head and shoulders above the shadowy figures of the crowd. Beyond them in the dusk was a pale blur that would be the white horse. A confusion of voices answered Big Jerry, then he laughed. His laugh was big and booming. "You fools," Big Jerry laughed. "What's the fuss about? You want the goods out of the store? Well, tomorrow we'll take what we want of them. They'll still be here. Nobody'll stop us when we get started." Laura was hearing rough language, but Big Jerry was using it. What he said was all mixed up with swear words and with other words she had never heard. She hardly heard them now because she felt all broken up. She felt as if everything was smashed like a dropped plate when Big Jerry took sides against Pa. The crowd was all around Big Jerry now. He was calling some of the men by their names and talking to them about drinking and playing cards. Some of the crowd went with him toward the bunkhouse. Then the rest of it broke into smaller pieces and scattered away in the dark. Ma shut the door. "Bedtime, girls," she said. Laura went trembling to bed as Ma told her to. Pa did not come. Now and then she heard an outbreak of loud, rough voices from the camp, and sometimes singing. She knew she would not sleep till Pa came. Then her eyes opened suddenly. It was morning. Beyond Silver Lake, the sky was burning gold, and one line of red cloud lay across it. The lake was rosy, and wild birds flew up clamoring. The camp was noisy, too. All around the boarding shanty, the men were gathered in a milling crowd, talking excitedly. Ma and Laura stood outdoors at the corner of the shanty watching. Then they heard a shout and saw Big Jerry jump onto his horse. "Come on, boys," he shouted. "All aboard for the fun." The white horse reared and whirled and reared again. Big Jerry gave a wild whoop, and the white horse broke into a run, and away they went over the prairie toward the west. All the men rushed to the stable, and in a minute, man after man was on his horse following Big Jerry. The whole crowd went streaming by on horses and was gone. A great cool quietness came over the camp and over Laura and Ma. Well, said Ma. Then they saw Pa walking from the store toward the boarding shanty. Fred the foreman came out of it and met him. They talked a minute. Then Fred went to the stable, got on his horse, and galloped away to the west. Pa was chuckling. Ma said she did not know what there was to laugh about. That big Jerry, Pa's laugh rang out. By gum, if he didn't leave them all away to their devilment somewhere else. Where? Asked Ma sharply. Pa was sober then. There's a riot at the Stebbins camp. Everybody's flocking there from all the camps. You're right, Carolyn. It's no laughing matter. Hey, Alex. Hey, Linda. And Jill. All day the camp was quiet. Laura and Mary did not go for their walk. There was no telling what might be happening at the Stebbins camp, nor when the dangerous crowd would come back. Ma's eyes were anxious all day. Her lips were tight, and now and then she sighed without knowing it. After dark, the men came, but they rode into the camp more quietly than they had left. They ate supper in the boarding shanty and then went to the bed in the bunkhouse. Laura and Mary were still awake when Pa came late from the store. They lay quiet in their bunk and heard Pa and Ma talking beyond the lamplit curtain. Nothing to worry about now, Caroline, Pa said. Caroline. They're tired out and everything's quiet. He yawned and sat down to take off his boots. What did they do, Charles? Was anybody hurt? Ma asked. They strung up the paymaster, said Pa, and one man was hurt bad. They put him in a lumber wagon and started back east with him to find a doctor. Don't get so upset, Caroline. We better thank our stars we got off all so easily. It's all over. I don't get upset until it's over, said Ma. Her voice was shaking. It's kind of like me. I handle the crisis and then I go to pieces when it's done. Come here, said Pa. Laura knew now that Ma was sitting on Pa's knee. There. I know you don't, he said to her. Never mind, Caroline. The grading's pretty near done. These camps will be closing down and gone before long. And next summer we'll be settled on the homestead. When are you going to pick it out? Said Ma. Quick as the camps close. I don't have a minute away from the store till then, said Pa. You know that. Yes, I know, Charles. What did they do about the men that killed the paymaster? Oh, they didn't kill him, Pa said. It was this way. You see, it's the same at Stebbins camp as here. The office is a lean-to at the back of the store. And it has one door in the store, and that's all. The paymaster stayed in the office with the money and kept the door locked. He paid the men through a little opening beside the door. Stebbins has got over 350 men drawing pay there, and they wanted their pay up to now, like the men here wanted it. When they got paid only for the 5th to the 15th, they acted ugly. Most of them wear guns, and they were in the store threatening to shoot up the place unless they got their full pay. In the melee, a couple of men got to quarreling, and one of them hit the other over the head with the weight from the scales. He dropped like a struck ox, and when they dragged him out into the air, they couldn't bring him back to his senses. So the crowd started out with a rope after the man that hit him. They trailed him easily enough into the slough, and then they couldn't find him in the high grass. They threshed around looking for him. That slough grass is taller than their heads, till I guess they ruined any trail he'd left. They kept on hunting till past noon, and lucky for him, they didn't find him. When they got back to the store, the door was locked. They couldn't get in. Somebody had loaded the hurt man into a wagon and headed back east to look for a doctor. But this time the men were piling into the place from all other camps. They ate everything they could get a hold of in the boarding shanty, and most of them were drinking. They kept pounding on the store door and yelling to the paymaster to open up and pay them, but nobody answered. A crowd of near 1,000 drunken men is an ugly thing to deal with. Somebody caught sight of that rope and shouted, "Hang the paymaster!" The whole crowd took it up, yelling, "Hang him! Hang him!" A couple of men got on top of the lean-to roof and tore a hole in the shingles. They left the end of the rope dangling over the edge of the roof, and the crowd grabbed hold of it. The two fellows dropped down onto the paymaster and got the noose around his neck. "Stop, Charles. The girls are awake." "Pshaw, that's all there is to it. They hauled him up once or twice, and he gave in. They didn't hang him? Not enough to hurt much. Some of the crowd was breaking down the store door with their neck yokes, and the storekeeper opened it. One of the fellows in the office cut the rope and let the paymaster down and opened up the pay window, and the paymaster paid every man what he was claimed due him. A good many men from other camps crowded in and drew pay too. There wasn't any bothering with time checks. Shame on him, Laura cried out. Pa drew back the curtain. What did he do it for? I wouldn't. She went on before Pa or Ma could say a word. There she was sitting on her knees in bed, her fists clenched. You wouldn't what? Said Pa. Pay them. They couldn't make me. They didn't make you. That mob was bigger than ours, and the paymaster didn't have Big Jerry to help him, said Pa. But you wouldn't have, Pa, Laura said. Shh, Ma hushed them. You'll wait grace. I'm thankful the paymaster was sensible. Better a live dog than a dead lion. Oh, no, Ma, you don't mean that, Laura whispered. Anyway, discretion is the better part of valor. You girls go to sleep, Ma murmured. Please, Ma, Mary whispered. How could he pay them? Where did he get the money when he'd already paid out what he had? That's so. Where did he? Ma asked. From the store. It's a big store, and it had already taken in most of what the men had been paid. They spend as fast as they get, said Pa. Now mind your Ma, girls, and go to sleep. He let the curtain fall. Very softly, under the quilt, Mary and Laura talked until Ma blew out the lamp. Mary said she wanted to go back to Plum Creek. Laura did not answer that. She liked to feel the great wide prairie all around the little shanty. Her heart beat strong and fast. She could hear in her mind again the savage, fierce sound of the crowd's growl and Pa's cold voice saying, Don't crowd too close. And she remembered the sweating men and the sweating horses moving strongly through the clouds of dust, building the railroad in a kind of song. She did not want to go back to Plum Creek. All right. Shall we do chapter 12? I'm sorry if I'm kind of yawning and stuff, folks. I'm really tired. It's been a long day, and it's going to be a very busy weekend. So I'm going to go behind my fan. I'll be right back. Excuse me. All right, one more chapter, and then I've got to clean up the mess I made building my cloud bank. Chapter 12, Wings over Silver Lake. Now, I don't know if we're going to come home Sunday or Monday, so better not count on a reading until Monday night, but there may be one on Sunday, okay? Wings over Silver Lake, Chapter 12. The weather grew colder. I'm not even wearing my proper glasses, but I seem to be doing better with this one. The weather grew colder and the sky full of wings and great birds flying. From east to west, from north to south, and as far up into the blue sky as eyes could see, were birds and birds and birds sailing on beating wings, flying south for the winter. At evening, down they came endlessly from the sky, sliding down long slopes of air to rest on the water of Silver Lake. There were great gray geese. There were smaller snow-white brant that looked like snow on the water's edge. There were ducks of many kinds, the large mallards with the shimmering purple and green on their wings, the redheads and the bluebills and the canvasbacks and teals and many others whose names Pa did not know. There were herons and pelicans and cranes. There were little mud hens and the small hell divers that peppered the water thickly with their little black bodies. And when a shot cracked, hell divers upended and vanished quicker than winking. They went far down in the water and stayed there a long time. At sunset, the whole large lake was covered with birds of all kinds, speaking in every kind of bird's voice to each other before they went to sleep for a night of rest on their long journey from north to south. Mosquito? The winter was driving them. The winter was coming behind them from the north. They knew it and started early so that they could rest on the way. All night they rested comfortable on the water that held them so softly, and the dawn came up. They rose again to swim onward in the high air and rested their strong wings. With their rested strong wings. One day Pa came in from hunting bringing a great snow-white bird. He said, "I'm sorry, Caroline," he said soberly. "I would not have done it if I'd known. I've shot a swan. It was too beautiful to kill, but I had no idea it was a swan. I've never saw one flying before." "It can't be helped now, Charles," Ma told him. They all stood looking sorrowfully at the beautiful snowy bird that would never fly again. "Come," said Ma, "I'll pluck its feathers and you skin it. We'll cure the skin with the swan's down on." "It's bigger than I am," Carrie said. The swan was so large that Pa measured it. Its feathery white wings measured 8 feet from tip to tip, and I'm pretty sure they didn't waste the meat. Another day, Pa brought a pelican to the shanty to show Ma what it was like. He opened the long bill and dead fish fell out of the pouch of the skin underneath. Ma snatched up her apron and pressed it to her face, and Carrie and Grace held their noses. "Take it away, Charles, quick," said Ma through the apron. Some of those fish were fresh, and some fish that had been dead a long, long time. Pelicans were not fit to eat, even their feathers smelled so strongly of rotten fish that Ma would not save them for pillows. Pa shot all the ducks and geese that they could eat, but he shot nothing else except hawks. Sometimes he shot a hawk because hawks kill other birds. Every day, Laura and Ma plucked the feathers from the scalded skins of the ducks and geese that Pa shot for dinner. "We'll soon have enough for a feather bed," said Ma. "Then you and Mary can sleep in feathers this winter." All those golden autumn days, the sky was full of wings. Wings beating low over the blue water of Silver Lake. Wings beating high in the blue air above it. Wings of geese, of brant, of ducks and pelicans and cranes and heron and swans and gulls, bearing them all away to the green fields in the south. What troll? The wings and the golden weather and the tang of frost in the mornings made Laura want to go somewhere. She didn't know where, she only wanted to go. "Let's go west," she said one night after supper. "Pa, can't we go west when Uncle Henry does?" Uncle Henry and Louisa and Charlie had earned enough money to go west. They were going to the big woods to sell their farm, and in the spring with Aunt Polly they were driving west to Montana. "Moving to Montana soon. Gonna be a dental floss tycoon." "Why can't we?" Laura said. "There's all the money you've earned, Pa, $300, and we've got the team in the wagon. Oh, Pa, let's go on west." "Mercy, Laura," Ma said. "Whatever!" And she couldn't go on. "I know, little half-pint," said Pa, and his voice was very kind. "You and I want to fly like the birds. But long ago I promised your ma that you girls should go to school. You can't go to school and go west. Now this is what bugs me. Why can't she teach them? She used to be a school teacher. Why isn't she I know she has a lot of chores, but if there's no school, there's nothing stopping her from teaching them on a regular basis. Right? Hi, Roseanne. Is it Lilia Benavides? Because that's all I see is messages retracted here. That's all I see. Lily, okay. Anyway, okay. No, it's not Lilia, obviously. I'm going to get a homestead, Laura, and you girls are going to go to school. Oh, wait a second. You can't go to school and go west. When this town is built, there'll be a school here. I'm going to get a homestead, Laura, and you girls are going to go to school. Laura looked at Ma and then at Pa again, and she saw that it must happen. Pa would stay on a homestead, and she would go to school. You'll thank me someday, Laura. And you too, Charles, Ma said gently. Just so you're content, Caroline, I'm satisfied, said Pa. That was true, but he did want to go west. Laura turned back to the dishpan and went on washing the supper dishes. Another thing, Laura, Pa said. You know Ma was a teacher, and her mother before her. Ma's heart is set on one of you girls teaching school, and I guess it'll have to be you. So you see, you must have your schooling. Laura's heart jerked, and then she seemed to feel it falling far, far down. She did not say anything. She knew that Pa and Ma and Mary, too, had thought that Mary would be a teacher. Now Mary couldn't teach. And, oh, I won't, Laura thought. I don't want to. I can't. And then she said to herself, you must. She could not disappoint Ma. Like, I'm sorry, folks, but it may have made Laura who she was in the end, but they put way too much on that little girl. Everybody else seemed to look after everybody else. It was like she was the third parent. Sorry. She could not disappoint Ma, so she must do as Pa said. So she had to be a school teacher when she grew up. Besides, there was nothing else she could do to earn money. One more chapter, breaking camp. Well, I mean, there's always going to be trolls, guys. There's always going to be trolls. And we just have to say a prayer for them, because if all they have to do is go around and they're probably from the bitch factory. But all they have to do, if all they have in their time is to scroll the internet looking for people who are enjoying themselves to disrupt their lives, then, we got to pray for them, because they're actually really sad people who have no life. They obviously don't have a life or friends, right? Because what kind of person would be friends with someone who deliberately tries to hurt people or disrupt people, right? So whoever you are, we'll say a prayer for you, okay? Because it's really, I've been working really hard at this. It's really easy to get angry, okay? And it's easy to pray for people we care about. It's not easy to pray for those that need it the most. And those are the ones that tick us off the most, All right. Chapter 13, Breaking Camp. Now all the vast low earth rippled soft in gentle colors under a faded sky. Hey, Stacy. Grasses were golden stemmed, and over the prairie they spread a coverlet of buff and tan and brown and warm brownish gray. Only the sloughs were darker with the green. The birds were fewer and hurrying. Often at sunset, a long flock talked anxiously high above Silver Lake. And instead of sinking to eat and rest on the water that must have tempted them so much, the tired leader fell back, another took his place, and they went on flying southward. Winter's cold was not far behind them, and they could not pause to rest. The wide road is easy, the narrow road is the hard way. Pray, exactly. Broad is the road to self-destruction. Narrow is the road to salvation, right? Uh, okay, Silver Lake, and instead of staying, winter's cold was not far behind them, and they could not pause to rest. In the frosty mornings and the chilly evenings, when they went to milk the cows, Laura and Lena wore shawls snug over their heads and pinned under their chins. Their bare legs were cold, and the wind nipped their noses. But when they squatted down to milk the warm cows, the shawls covered them cozily, and their feet warmed under them. And they sang while they milked. "Where are you going, my pretty maid?" "I'm going a milking, sir," she said. "May I go with you, my pretty maid?" "Oh, yes, if you please, kind sir," she said. "What is your fortune, my pretty maid?" "My face is my fortune, sir," she said. "Then I can't marry you, my pretty maid." "Nobody asked you, sir," she said. "Well, I guess we won't be seeing each other again for a long time," Lena said one evening. The grading job at Silver Lake was nearly finished. The next morning early, Lena and Jean and Aunt Dosha were leaving. They were going away before sunup because they were getting away with 3 big wagon loads of goods from the company stores. They would not tell anybody where they were going for fear the company would catch them. I wish we had time to ride the black ponies again," Laura said. "Gosh," Lena spoke in that wicked word. "Gosh," Lena spoke that wicked word boldly. "I'm glad this summer's over. I hate houses." She swung the milk pail and chanted, "No more cooking, no more dishes, no more washing, no more scrubbing. Whoopee!" Then she said, "Well, goodbye. I guess you're going to stay here right here as long as you live." "I guess so," Laura said miserably. She was sure that Lena was going out west, maybe even to Oregon. "Well, goodbye." Next morning, Laura milked the lone cow by her lonely self. Aunt Dosha had driven away with a load of oats from the feed room. Lena had driven a wagon load of goods from the store, and Jean still another big load of scrapers and plows. Uncle Hi would follow them as soon as he settled with the company. "I guess Hi's debt is big enough this time with all those goods charged to him," Pa said. "Shouldn't you have stopped it, Charles?" Ma worried. "It's not my lookout," said Pa. "My orders were to let the contractor take anything he wanted and charge it to him." "Oh, come, Caroline. It wasn't stealing. Hi hasn't got away with any more than's due him for his work here and at the camp on the Sioux. The company cheated him there, and he's got even here. That's all there is to it." "Oh, I'm sorry you're in pain, Rosie." "Well," said Ma, "I'll be glad when these camps are gone and we're settled again." Every day the camp was noisy with men drawing their last pay and leaving. Wagon after wagon went away to the east. Every night the camp was emptier. One day Uncle Henry, Louisa, and Charlie started the long drive back to Wisconsin to sell the farm. The boarding shanty and the bunkhouse were deserted, the store was empty, and Pa was only waiting till the company man came to check his bookkeeping. "We'll have to go east somewhere to spend the winter," he said to Ma. "The shanty's too thin for zero weather, even if the company would let us stay in it, even if we had any coal." "Oh, Charles," said Ma, you haven't found the homestead yet. And if we have to spend the money you've earned just living till spring." "I know, but what else can we do?" said Pa. I can find a homestead all right before we leave and file on it next spring. Maybe next summer I can get a job to live on and pay for the lumber to build us a shanty. I could make a sod shanty, but even so, it will take all we've got to live till spring with the prices and supplies out here in coal. No, we'd better go east for the winter." It was so hard to get ahead. Laura tried to cheer up, but she couldn't. She didn't want to go back east again. She hated to leave Silver Lake and go east. They had got as far as Silver Lake, and she wanted to hang on there, not to be pushed back. But if they must, they must. Next spring, they would start again. It would do no good to complain. "Don't you feel well, Laura?" Ma asked. "Oh, yes, Ma," she answered. But she felt so heavy and dark that trying to be cheerful only made her more miserable. The company man had come to check Pa's bookkeeping, and the last wagons from the west were going by. Even the lake was almost empty of birds, and the sky was bare except for one hurrying streak of flyers. Ma and Laura mended the wagon cover and baked bread for the long drive. That evening, Pa came whistling from the store and blew into the shanty like a breeze. "How'd you like to stay here all winter, Caroline?" he sang out, "in the surveyor's house." Ow. "Oh, Pa, can we?" Laura cried. "You bet we can," said Pa, "if your ma wants to. It's a good, sound, weather-tight house, Caroline. The head surveyor was at the store just now, and he said they thought they had to stay, and they laid in coal and provisions enough to last them through. But if I'll take charge and be responsible for the company tools till spring, they'll go out for the winter," and the company's agreed. "There's flour and beans and salt meat and potatoes and even some canned stuff," he told me, "and coal. We can have all of it for nothing, just for staying out here this winter. We can use the stable for the cow." Remember they said earlier that it didn't have a stable? "We can use the stable for the cow and team. I told them I'd let him know early tomorrow morning. What do you say, Caroline?" They all looked at Ma and waited. Laura could hardly keep still in her excitement. To stay at Silver Lake, not to have to go back east after all. Ma was disappointed. She had been wanting to go back to settled country, but she said, "It does seem providential, Charles. There's coal, you say?" "I wouldn't think of staying without it," said Pa, "but the coal's there." "Well, supper's on the table," said Ma. "Wash up and eat it before it gets cold. It does look like a good chance, Charles." At supper, they all talked of nothing else. It would be pleasant to live in a snug house. The shanty was cold with wind blowing through its cracks, though the door was shut and a fire in the stove. "Don't it make you feel rich?" Laura began. "Doesn't," said Ma. "Doesn't it make you feel rich, Ma? Just to think of the whole winter's provisions laid in already," said Laura. "Not a penny going out till spring," said Pa. "Yes, Laura, it does." Ma smiled. "You're right, Charles. Of course we must stay." "Well, I don't know, Caroline," Pa said. "In some ways we'd better not. So far as I know, we won't have a neighbor nearer than Brookings, 60 miles, if anything happened." A knock at the door startled them all. It was in answer to Pa's "Come in." A big man opened the door. He was bundled in thick coats and a muffler. His short beard was black, and his cheeks were red, and his eyes were black as the eyes of the little papoose in Indian Territory whom Laura had never forgotten. I have a feeling she did see one, but she was so little that just stuck with her. "Hello, Boast," Pa said. "Come up to the fire. It's chilly tonight. This is my wife and girls. Mr. Boast filed on a homestead out here, and he's been working on the grade. Ma gave Mr. Boast a chair by the fire and held his hands out to the warmth. One hand was bandaged. "Did you hurt your hand?" Ma asked quietly. "Only a sprain," said Boast, "but the heat feels good on it." Turning to Pa, he went on, "I'm needing some help, Ingalls. You remember my team that I sold Pete? He paid me part down and said he'd pay the rest next payday, but he's kept putting it off, and now I'm darned if he hasn't skipped out with the team. I'd go after him and take them, but his son's with him, and they'd put up a fight. I don't want trouble with two toughs at once, and me with a lame hand." "There's enough of us around yet to tend to it," said Pa. "I don't mean that," said Mr. Boast. "I don't want any trouble." Then just where do I come in?" said Pa. "I was thinking there's no law out here, no way to collect a debt, no officers, not even a county. But maybe Pete don't know that." "Oh, said Pa. "You want me to make out some papers to serve on him?" "I've got a man that'll act as sheriff and serve them," Mr. Boast said. His eyes twinkled as much as Pa, but the twinkles were not alike. Mr. Boast twinkled small and black. Pa's twinkled wide and blue. Pa laughed out loud and slapped his knee. "What a joke! Lucky I've got some legal cap left. I'll make out your papers, Boast. Go get your sheriff." Mr. Boast hurried away while Ma and Laura hastily cleared the table. Pa squared up to it and wrote on a long, large sheet of paper, red line down the sides. There, he said, that looks important, and finished just in time. Mr. Boat was knocking at the door. Another man was with him, wrapped in a big overcoat, a cap pulled low over his eyes, and a muffler wrapped around his neck and across his mouth. Here you are, Sheriff, Pa said to him. Serve this writ of attachment and bring back the team or the money, dead or alive, with costs of this suit at law. Their laughter seemed to shake the shanty. Pa looked at the cap and muffler that hid the man's face. Lucky for you it's a cold night, Sheriff, he said. When the two men shut the door behind them, Pa stopped laughing. He said to Ma, that was the head surveyor, or I'll eat my hat. He slapped his thigh and roared again. In the night, Mr. Boast's voice and Pa's woke Laura at the door. At the door, Mr. Boast was saying, I saw your light and stopped to tell you it worked. Pete was so scared that he'd have turned over the money and the team both. That crook's got reason to be scared of the law. Here are the costs, Ingalls. The surveyor wouldn't take any. He said the fun of it would more than paid him. You keep his share, said Pa. I'll take mine. The dignity of this court must be upheld. When Mr. Boast laughed, Laura and Mary and Carrie and Ma all burst out laughing. They couldn't help it. Pa's laugh was like great bells ringing. It made you feel warm and happy. But Mr. Boast's laugh made everybody laugh. Hush, you'll wake Grace, Ma said. What's the joke? Carrie asked. She had been asleep and only heard Mr. Boast laugh. What are you laughing at? Mary asked her. Mr. Boast's laugh tickles, Carrie said. In the morning, Mr. Boast came to breakfast. The camp was gone and there was nowhere else to eat. The surveyors started east that morning in their buggy, and the last teamster passed. Mr. Boast was the last man to go. He had to wait until his hand was better so that he could drive his team. His hand was worse that morning because it had been chilled in the night, but he started east anyway. He was going to Iowa to be married. If you folks are going to stay here all winter, I don't know, I'll bring Ellie back and stay too, he said. If we can make it before the winter sets in. Be glad to have you, Boast, said Pa. Ma said we would indeed. They watched Mr. Boast's wagon going and heard its rattling die away on the wagon track to the east. The whole prairie was empty now, and not even one flock of birds was in the cold sky. As soon as Mr. Boast's wagon was out of sight, Pa brought his team and wagon to the door. Come, Caroline, he called. Nobody's left in camp but us. And it's moving day. I hope everybody has a good evening. I'm sorry if I'm a bit sloppy sometimes with my reading, but it's at the end of the day and I'm usually pretty tired, but I love reading for y'all and I'm just so glad you come out and enjoy it with me. Hopefully this is Wednesday. I'm leaving tomorrow night. I don't know if there'll be any cards tomorrow night, but I won't be able to read Little House Live until I get home. So either Sunday night or Monday night. Okay? I love you guys. Don't ever forget that. And remember, pray for the trolls. If that's the only life they have and the only entertainment they have, they must be sorry people indeed. Right? Mwah. Take care. God bless.